We're here with all 5 candidates for Lake County Commission in District 4, and rather than, usually I introduce people, but if you could just go around and give your names, and why don't we start here with Mr. Williams.
Thank you, I get to go first.
Yes,
Finally.
sir.
My name is Paul Williams, and I'm a fiscally responsible conservative Republican running for Lake County Commissioner, District 4.
Okay,
And I'm Linda Stewart, and I'm currently your commissioner.
all right.
I'm Igor Emery.
I'm Leslie Campione.
And I'm Buddy Atkins, a conservative Republican running for Lake County Commissioner, District 4.
Okay, so we got names and some credentials. We'll spend probably about an hour asking a few questions, hearing what you have to say about them. We start off our interviews though with a question that we ask all the candidates. So in this case, I'll just ask if there's a show of hands. Has anybody here ever been arrested? Any arrests? No arrests?
Arrested?
Arrested.
Yeah, I was arrested once.
Okay, can you tell me what that was?
Criminal swimming when I was a youth.
Criminals.
Swimming?
Swimming, yes. Yeah.
Okay, that
Sounds like fun.
sounds pretty serious. Yes, and fun.
Yeah.
Was it skinny dipping?
No.
Okay.
No, it wasn't quite that
Where
amusing.
was it? Where did this
Up in
horrific crime
up in
occur?
Atlanta.
In Atlanta.
Yeah.
All
The
right.
charges were dropped, but
Okay, so well, if that's the worst of it.
Never even heard that one.
Has anybody ever had a bankruptcy, a personal or corporate
No.
bankruptcy of any kind?
No.
no.
Okay, all right, thanks. Okay, I think I wanted to start off with a question about growth because, as I understand it, I believe correctly, the last election, growth was an important issue to voters, and there were a couple of unexpected results in the election. So maybe if we could start, and I'll make the question somewhat generic in the way I stated, but I'm sure you'll want to elaborate. I'm wondering if you're of a mind that Lake County's growth policies in the past have been irresponsible, or maybe you want to characterize it some other way, and whether or not in the last couple of years things have gotten better, or maybe, depending on your viewpoint, worse. And finally, what your general philosophy is on the direction that Lake should head in when it comes to growth. And I'll just start right here in the middle instead of at the end, Mr. Emery, if you want to take that question.
Well, I would be comfortable characterizing it as irresponsible. I think we had a pretty much one-sided economy in Lake County. It's a natural transition in ways because when we lost our oranges, we had a lot of land that was easy to build on. And it's unfortunate that our economy just was completely dominated by that business. We're paying the price for it now. And I did run 4 years ago for county commission, and I ran against what appeared to be a pretty strong tide of pro-growth commission. And we did prevail. We changed the direction 4 years ago, and I think that we have benefited greatly from that over the last 4 years. We've spent a lot of the intervening time coming up with a comprehensive plan that I think is a good one for Lake County, and I think it gives us the opportunities to actually control our growth for a change and to give us a destiny that's much more diversified.
Oh, so in the last couple of years, you're satisfied with the growth direction that the county has taken?
The economy's dictated a lot of that. I mean, the market's pretty much just gone away, and we're all nervous about what it's going to come back as. But we haven't had a really effective in-place comp plan. We're using the one from 1991. And so now we've just adopted that, and it's hopefully going to be found compliant in a week, 2 weeks. And so we'll start putting that in place.
Okay, and well, let me just one follow-up question. Do you have any particular ideas about how, as a county commissioner, you would take on these growth issues over the next term?
Yeah, by following the plan. I mean, that's really what I want to do is to aggressively follow the plan that we have in place. And I think once we establish that pattern, we begin talking with the cities about how we're not going to be approving growth in the county, growing the cities from the outside in, that we're going to direct the growth towards the cities and work with them so that they can establish and enforce some urban service boundaries. And I think that'll help them get their fiscal house in order as well.
Okay. Something I probably should have mentioned at the outset is, and you all will correct me if I'm wrong, but county commission races are partisan races in Lake County. I have 4 Republicans here. Mr. Emery, you're the lone Democrat, so you'll be in the general election regardless of the outcome of the primary. So the other 4 folks here are the ones who are trying to get past the primary to the general election.
Gives me the illusion of time, but we have 192,000 voters, and good luck talking to all of them.
Okay.
So,
How about you? You're up next. We'll go
Okay.
counterclockwise here, or clockwise.
Well, I think that with regard to the question of irresponsible decision-making in the past, prior to the current county commission, I think that we had a history of being hit with growth very hard, growth pressures, and we weren't prepared. Our regulations really were not up to par to handle the type of pressure that we were getting, particularly in South Lake County, where we have a lot of commuters that commute to Metro Orlando, and that is where they really felt it the most. As far as decisions, and so I wasn't surprised. You mentioned the results were surprising in the last election. I wasn't surprised because I personally felt that we had, it was somewhat spiraling out of control, and I think it was happening all over the country, and it had a lot to do with the real estate boom and the bubble, and the land was there, it was available, and so it was being developed at rapid speed, and I think everybody was so worried about that's what we saw in the election was, hey, let's slow down. The reality is, though, once our county commissioners were elected and put in place, I don't think it was their policies that necessarily slowed things down. It was the bubble bursting. That was a big part of it. One thing, though, that did happen was this ongoing, long, drawn-out debate over our comprehensive plan. 5-6 years they were working on the comprehensive plan. And I think that part of it was very detrimental to our ability to actually get some new businesses to Lake County, because we were being perceived as a county where it was very difficult to come in and make a request and go through the process, because we actually had a moratorium on any new land use changes, and it gave the appearance that we really were kind of shut down to business. So I think that part of it was unfortunate, and what came out of it, I would say about 95% of the new plan I like, and I think is positive, and about 5%, and the way that it was adopted and the long drawn out process, that's really what I have always taken issue with, that it took so long to get there, and the process was just very cumbersome on landowners that wanted to be involved, because it dragged on for so long.
Well, let me follow up then and ask you a question about that. If the process was all that cumbersome in Lake County and that difficult to deal with, why was it growing so quickly? So it looked like somebody was getting what they wanted.
Well, that was inventory. That was, no matter what the county commission did, there was going to be residential growth as a result of inventory that was already in place.
Well,
and that goes back to those irresponsible decisions
Okay, well,
made
that's what I'm
in the
getting at,
decade
because-
before. Absolutely.
Because, generally the problem emerges when governments are asked to change their land use plan, and if they're not of a mind to say no, they say yes, and so you end up with a lot of changes. Sometimes, in some cases, some in Lake County that were detrimental to the community because they created sprawl. So I guess my follow-up question on that was the problem going years back, was the problem with the county's land use plan, or was the problem with the county commission's inability or unwillingness to say no?
I think a lot of it was the regulations, the actual land development regulations, the design criteria, the kind of things that could have created a higher quality of development pattern that we didn't have in place, and that other communities, I always like to use Port Orange as an example of a place that has wonderful land development regulations. And it's because of those land development regulations, not so much those underlying land uses, but the regulations that cause development to happen in a way that preserved open space, large buffers, large setbacks, things of that nature, that I think go a long way to making sure that when development does happen, it's attractive, it's responsible, it actually brings your tax base up instead of pulling your tax base back down.
Okay. Mr. Atkins, would you like to take that question?
Yes. I would say there was a lot of irresponsibility on the county commissioners back in the prior to the 2006 election. The growth was out of control. They could not stop it. Land developers had a lot of influence in the county, and they controlled what was going to go on, and they controlled I think a lot of the decisions that the county commissioners made. At the 2006 election, I believe that at that point we went from a pro-growth to a no-growth. They wanted to shut the door on development. They felt that we had enough subdivisions in Lake County, which we probably did have enough. And I think that at that point, the no-growth attitude and the economy both took Lake County down a little further, and what was happening in Lake County. So the comp plan I don't agree with totally. I think the comp plan should have been put out to more business people to get responses on their information they'd like to input into the comp plan. I agree with Leslie. I'd say probably 95% of it is good, but there's still property rights that have been taken away from landowners by the comp plan, in my opinion. And I think I've been in property rights business for many, many years as a real estate broker. So I have defended property rights, and I will continue defending property rights of people of Lake County. So that's my opinion on the comp plan and on growth. I am what I would call, I would like to say, control growth. I think that we need to control our growth to a point. We need to the impact fees were raised back a few years ago, which actually did hurt more growth in Lake County, and of course it kept the revenues down in Lake County, which we needed revenue. We need more revenue in Lake County, and I think that giving us more revenue would help out a great deal. I'm a businessman, and I think creating revenue rather than cutting services is what we need to do in Lake County.
Okay, well, so I have a follow-up question for
Okay.
you. You mentioned that the new plan infringes on property rights in some manner. Can you give an example of how that has occurred?
Down in South Lake County, there's a overlay there. It's the property. If you own a 10-acre tract of land in the certain section of Claremont, first of all, you can only develop a certain section. If it's a 10-acre tract and there's 5 acres of wetland, then you got 5 acres left. In that 5 acres, you can only develop 40% of that 5 acres. So that's infringing on the people's property rights a little bit too much. It was recommended, I believe it was 50%, and they increased it to a 60% development right.
So your position isn't that in that example, that 10-acre example you gave, that people should be able to build on the wetlands. You're saying that whatever wetlands are on the property should go as some sort of credit toward their overall what they can build.
In the environmental section, yes.
Uh-huh.
Right.
Okay, Mr. Williams.
Thank you very much. I do feel that several years back, 10 or 15 years ago, that the county commission and us in Lake County, we were irresponsible in allowing growth to overwhelm us as it has done. I feel that the county commission had the capability but the inability to say no to much of the growth because of in the past, and I've completed a good amount of research on the history of Lake County. Yes, there is a core group of individuals that run Lake County in the past, and they're still doing it today. This core group really has their fingers in almost everything that we do here in Lake County. I think it's time that we stop it, because that core group was just driven by financial gain. I feel that there was very little integrity in the county commission prior to what we have now, and I think that we're making some positive inroads. The comp plan is just as good as any plan that we have now or in the near future. I think we should just live with it. We have the ability to make changes and revisions when the time comes for the comp plan to be revised. There's room in that comp plan for development, but there's also room for commercial growth and development as well. I'd like to see more commercial growth and development, more so than housing development. It strikes a good balance right now, and I think Lake County has been starving over the last several years because it's been dependent upon one industry, retail industry, as well as the housing industry for survival, for its economic development. That can't go on anymore. We have to have a balance, and it's my responsibility or role that I'd like to take on is to bring about that balance, to add more diversity in recruiting business and industry to Lake County. Many people have grown up in Lake County and they haven't been outside of Lake County too much. There's a few fortunate people that have. And there's an awful lot more to see throughout the entire country and a lot more to develop that can be brought here to Lake County in terms of industry and business. So I feel we should take the blinders off. For the future, my philosophy and the philosophy that I see with many people today is that since the housing industry or the development industry or the boom has taken precedence over the last several years, that it's top of mind for many people to put a halt to it right now and put their minds on something else, other developments, other needs that Lake County truly has a demand for. So I'm glad it's many people are conscientious about it today.
Okay, let me ask you a follow-up question.
Sure.
You made a comment about a core group of individuals who were, I guess, sort of running things.
Sure.
Can you elaborate? Who are we talking about?
I'm not going to mention any names, but
Well, how about professions or anything else?
developers, attorneys,
Okay.
they really run Lake County. Let's not try to hide it or escape that. It's a core group of individuals, and it hasn't changed to this day.
Okay. Okay, and you brought up economic development, but that's a separate question I'm going to have for
Okay,
everybody.
that's
So next time around, that might be our next one. Okay, Linda Stewart, who shares the name with another county commissioner in
And the same district.
Orange. What a coincidence. How about that question?
Well, I do agree with what Mr. Williams said, but I disagree with his time frame. There's been a core group of individuals in our county that have controlled the county commission until 4 years ago, and they no longer do control the county commission. In the past, we did have irresponsible growth. We had based our industry, our economy on a single industry, which was house building. We had a 20% commercial and 80% residential tax base. And we just grew houses everywhere. We cut down the hills, we cut down the trees, and then we started sprawling out into our rural areas. It was very irresponsible. And so irresponsible growth was the main issue 4 years ago. And that is why I was elected, because I didn't believe in irresponsible growth. I believed in smart growth and diversifying our economy. But of course, once I was elected, the recession came along, and that pretty well took care of the growth issue. But this recession will be over one day, and we will be growing again. And that's why I'm very glad that we've put a smart growth comprehensive plan in place. It directs our growth toward the municipalities and our transportation corridors, our residential and our commercial growth. That's where the services are. That's where they're easy to be obtained and cheaply obtained. And it keeps the cost off the taxpayers. And it also protects our rural areas and our environmental sensitive areas and our water recharge areas. So I really do like our comp plan. It includes a lot of open space requirements to protect our quality of life. It balances our tax base more, provides for more commercial growth. So I feel like going forward, we live by our comp plan. No property rights were violated in it. In South Lake, those landowners have the very same land use on it now as they did before the comp plan. We're very protective of that. So I think we have a very good comp plan in place, and the future of Lake County is going to hinge on us staying true to that comp plan. It's not perfect. We're going to end up making some changes, minor changes probably, but following our comp plan and the smart growth it provides for economic and residential.
For the sake of people who might be watching or will be watching, and for my sake, will you remind me, when did the comp plan get this overhaul? When did that
Well,
occur?
they've been working on it for several years, but we just sent it up to DCA, and DCA, we just got the letter back, Department of Community Affairs, and they've accepted everything in it, except for a few amendment changes we put in at the very end because they felt like they hadn't had enough time to review them. And so those will come back forward in the next amendment cycle. But so DCA just gave the go-ahead on it, and so basically it's taking effect right now.
Okay. Rather than ask a question individually, I wanted to ask if anybody here, maybe by just raising your hand, and I don't know if I'll see any go up or not, supports the constitutional amendment that will be voted on called Amendment 4, Hometown Democracy. Does anybody here like that and plan on voting for it?
I may be.
Maybe.
I'm really undecided, but I like a lot of what's in it because I realized one of the reasons that I ran was that elected officials had stopped listening to the citizens, and they certainly weren't listening to me. And I and thousands of others cried out very loudly that we wanted some controlled growth, some managed smart growth, and they didn't listen to us. They kept giving in to special interest, and so I feel like it does give it may give some power to the citizens, and I'm concerned about the untruths being said about it. But I do have concerns about it too, because it is possible that a developer with a lot of money could put on a wonderful campaign, and somebody in the north side of the county could say, hey, that development sounds great for the south end of the county, and
Okay.
approve it.
Well, I think I'll probably end up giving everybody a chance to speak
Oh,
to it
okay.
then, but
I have some
I
concerns.
didn't know if it was okay, but you have some concerns. But it sounds like you feel favorably about it. But
I may vote for it.
you may vote for it. But I have just one question off of that, which is that would you not look at the 2006 election and maybe be persuaded that people did take care of the growth problem by electing people they thought were going to make better decisions?
If the 2006 election could be maintained for the future, I would say yes. But unfortunately, those special interest groups that fought me 4 years ago have been rampant in their fight for the last 4 years. Very unpleasant, very nasty, and it tells me how strongly they want me out of office. So I am very afraid that the 2006 elections may get undone by the 2010 elections.
Okay, why don't we go in reverse order then, Mr. Williams? How about Amendment 4?
I feel that Amendment 4 is too cumbersome on government. I think it's going to be very expensive. I don't think that our Lake County Supervisor of Elections has enough budget to continuously hold voting to comply with Amendment 4 if it does pass. Property rights of individuals should remain within themselves, with that individual, and let them comply with the zoning rule regulations in their area.
Just to follow up on that, doesn't the amendment call for elections to be held only during regularly scheduled elections?
Yes, it does.
Okay,
Yes, it does.
so the supervisor wouldn't be holding elections? They
No,
would
no,
otherwise
but still, we
not.
don't have a budget for that right now. We're not allocated a budget for additional cost in the elections for that.
Okay, Mr. Atkins?
I would be against Amendment 4. I think Amendment 4 is going to be a job killer for companies. We need businesses to come to Lake County and to Florida. And if Amendment 4 is approved, what you're going to find is businesses will not come to Florida at all. It will be a job killer. It will cost taxpayers more money because each individual changes that is taking place on Amendment 4 will be put on a ballot, and that ballot will be cumbersome, it'll be lengthy, and it'll be a lot of campaigning, a lot of lobbying, and a lot of attorneys making a lot of money. It was introduced by attorneys for attorneys to make money for attorneys, and I think that Amendment 4 hurts the taxpayers of Florida and of course Lake County.
Okay, your turn. What about Amendment 4?
Well, I'm an attorney, and
Was this created for you?
wasn't created for this attorney. I know I did a lot of research on the attorneys that did put this forth and did some background research on them. And they're very much activists in the area of, you know, environmental issues. And really, it's not so much environmental issues, it's anti-growth altogether. I really feel, after looking at some of the things that were written by these individuals, that they really wanted to just kind of stop everything. They were smart enough to have written it in a way that it could have actually worked. From the standpoint, if it had designated a certain type of growth that we were trying to regulate, for example, residential growth, a certain threshold, say they put a limitation on acreage, so if it went over a certain acreage, then we would have one of these popular votes on a particular use. But for me, it comes back to this, the concept of representative government and the fact that we rely upon our elected officials to do the research, make those decisions, and take everyone's interests into consideration when they make a land use decision. And I'm afraid that what will happen from this is it will backfire, and it will hurt the little guy. It will hurt it will hurt minorities. It will hurt in a situation where, say, there's an obnoxious land use that's being proposed, and all of the folks in the community vote yes, unless it's the people that are getting it in their backyard. So it does have the potential of really backfiring and really hurting people. And I also think, from a land use perspective, because I've been involved in a lot of land use issues through the years, and I think it'll encourage urban sprawl, because developers will go the path of least resistance, and they will probably go to rural areas that are desperate for activity, and those areas will say yes to anything that comes their way, and it will then result in bad planning.
Okay. Well, just one point of clarification. If it goes to a referendum, if this passed,
Mhm.
and if a land use change went to referendum, isn't it only if the elected body, whether it's a county or city, has already approved it, so it's basically an affirmative vote?
Well, the way that and it's very hard to tell from the way that it's written, because it doesn't designate, number one, that it only happens in a regular election. I mean, there's still the possibility that a special election could be paid for by the person making the application. But in the case of an unpopular land use, you would have a public hearing process, which you do have now. But this is a way
But
for...
if the county, say you're a county commissioner, if
Mhm.
Lake County Commission voted it down, some
Mhm.
guy, some developer comes to you, wants to change something, and the Lake County Commission says no, they don't then go to the voters for approval to override the commission, right? They would
Right.
go, they would go only if the commission gave a thumbs up.
Right.
Okay.
And I think what will happen, though, is that you could have a commission saying, hey, let's punt. You know, we don't know what to do here.
Okay.
Let's punt it to the voters. And then, and I've seen elected officials do this in the past, where when they can't make up a hard decision, they say, let's put it out to referendum, let's get input on it, and then we'll just live with whatever the popular vote is.
That's true enough. Okay, Mr. Emery, how about you?
You know, it's hard to talk about Amendment 4 because there's so much explosive rhetoric out there. We've heard a couple of actually good issues raised here. But the truth about Amendment 4 is it really only comes up when we're going to alter the comp plan. If a developer comes forward and follows the comprehensive plan, then they're able to build right now. We don't have to do any referendum or anything. And it's like you say, it does come up when the commission chooses to deviate from the established comprehensive plan. Then the voters get to choose. Do we want to deviate from the comprehensive plan? Do we want to do this development or not? And ultimately, it comes down to who are the subject of the lobbying. The developers are lobbying the commissioners right now through our electoral process, and when the thing actually comes up, like happened in Orange County recently with the big ranch out there, Destiny Ranch. So we've seen which group is going to be lobbied, commissioners or electorate, and that's really what Amendment 4 is going to change. The subject of the lobbying, not really the outcome.
Okay, sounds like you'll vote for it then.
I will.
Okay.
But I don't think it's the best law choice. I don't really like to see the Constitution put in this arena. I don't think it's the best solution. But the fact that we're having this discussion is because for so long developers have been able to get deviations from the comp plan because of who they represent.
Okay. I'm once again going to to sort of, in the interest of jumping around and confusing everybody, I realize that since we're taping this whole thing, I probably ought to just go around and ask everybody to say maybe how long you've lived in Lake County and what your profession is. So don't want too much elaboration, but just so people again can sort of keep track of the players. Ms. Campione, would you like to start?
Well, I was born in Orlando, and my family moved to Lake County in 1971. I counted it out the other day. I think it's a total of 30 years because I went away to college and ultimately came back. I'm an attorney, but I have a kind of niche law practice. I've represented 3 municipalities in Lake County, Lady Lake, Town of Lady Lake for 9 years up in the Villages area, and I'm currently the City of Umatill's attorney, and I only handle property issues and municipal government issues, environmental type issues, and business transactions, corporations, things like that.
Okay, Mr. Atkins.
I'm born and raised in Mount Dora. I've been 61 years in Mount Dora, and I'm a real estate broker in Mount Dora. I had 3 children and 8 grandchildren. We all live in Mount Dora. I presently serve on the Lake County Board of Adjustments, and I serve on Sheriff Gary Border Search and Rescue Squad. All my family live in Lake County, and I have never moved out of Lake County.
Okay, very well. Mr. Williams?
I've been in Lake County 6 years. I'm from Cape Girardeau, Missouri. I have a master's degree, MBA in marketing and finance. I'm a financial consultant for small business development for the financial institutions, the credit union industry. And that's basically it.
Okay. Ms. Stewart?
Well, I was born in Lakeland, Florida, but I grew up in Mount Dora, so I've been here 54 years. I graduated from outdoor schools, and I have loved Lake County. I have my bachelor's and my master's in education, and I've taught school in Lake County for 32 years. Now, for the last 4 years, I've been county commissioner, so I've had 4 years of valuable hands-on training as a commissioner. And in addition, I voluntarily took coursework through the Florida Association of Counties to become a certified county commissioner. So I've learned a lot in the last 4 years.
All right, very well. Mr. Emery?
I was born in DeLand and lived in Gainesville for 6 years when I was going up at UF. Met my wife there, and we've lived in Lake County since 1986, 24 years now.
Okay. And what's been your profession?
I work as a bicycle shop,
Okay.
sales and mechanic.
Okay, very well. Well, Mr. Williams, we'll start with you because you brought it up. It's a question that comes up, an answer that comes up a lot in these interviews that we do, and that's how to improve your local economy and what sort of steps as a county commissioner you could take and to create jobs. So if you could start off with, and again, I'd ask everybody to be kind of concise because we have 5 people, but if you could sort of outline what you think the steps should be.
I think we should evaluate all of our resources first of all. We've got an awful lot of good resources here in Lake County. We've got transportation ways, we've got airports, we've got a short rail system. We've got a good labor base that's been out of work for quite some time, blue collar primarily, and we can reinvent and retrain their skills. My plan that I've outlined is to utilize the relationships that we have with many CEOs and CFOs and manufacturing associations all across this country. Invite business leaders and commerce leaders to come to Lake County so that we can have a forum where many city officials from all the municipalities can come and ask questions, find out what these business leaders' hesitations and concerns are about not relocating, but when they're in the mode of expanding their operations and product lines to include Lake County. What are their hesitations? What are their concerns? What are their needs? We should find out that first before we decide which companies that we can actually go after. Because you can't just put a list of companies on a dartboard and throw a dart at up there and say, hey, let's go after this one, or that one, because we'll be making some poor choices. We have to complement our resources that fit the company's needs. And that's the solution orientation that I believe that would satisfy the needs of Lake County. That's a step that we should take to develop our economic development shortfall here. We should also work with the current small businesses to enhance their business needs. Small business lending is important because this allows them to make loans from banks and financial institutions to hire more employees, and also to develop their resources to develop their businesses or their services or their products, to get them out into the channels a lot quicker so that they can develop green. Green means income, green means revenue. So I believe we should work with our small businesses and also reach out and recruit diverse business and industry. Light medical manufacturing is one of them that's a key target. Engineering is another key target that would fit many of our resources that we have here.
Okay.
That's
Well,
my
some of
answer.
those businesses you mentioned are businesses that counties and other municipalities throughout the state would like to get as well. And some people have talked about offering some kinds of financial incentives, though sometimes they're fairly vague about where the money comes from to do that. Do you have any interest in in financial incentives to get companies to come, tax breaks or anything?
I do have a inversion tax incentive plan over a 5-year period. The first year, so that they can budget for their outlay of expenditures, and so because it does affect their bottom line. The first year, they would pay 80% of their tax base. The second year, 70%. The third year, 60%. The fourth year, 50%. Of the fifth year, maybe 40%. Also, we would give them preferential hiring. They would give us preferential hiring for the Lake County residents in exchange for that tax incentive, the inversion tax incentive, as well as accelerating the permitting process. Also, we should invest in our industrial parks that we already have outlined and laid out throughout all of Lake County, so that they can come in and put up their tilt walls and get their products and goods and services up and going and into the distribution channels rapidly.
What'd you say, tilt walls?
Tilt walls, manufacturing walls,
Oh.
walls, buildings.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay, Ms. Stewart, economic development?
Well, I was concerned about economic development when I ran 4 years ago, because we had 35% of our workers having to work outside the county because we didn't have the jobs for them in Lake County. So on my first day of office, I initiated our new economic development strategic plan, and working with, wanted to bring the business community in, because they're the ones that know about what attracts businesses and keeps businesses. So we developed a committee composed of business leaders, successful business leaders, and community leaders. We did our research, we evaluated our strengths and our resources, and from the different areas of Lake County, we've identified 5 industries that would work well in Lake County. That's agri-tech, clean tech, business services, of course, health and wellness. We have a good head start on that, and ecotourism. And then we put together 4 working committees composed of those same successful business people and community leaders from Lake Sumter Community College and different municipalities that are working now for set up infrastructure, marketing, and to attract the businesses here. Of course, it's going to be a very slow process. It took Orange County 21 years and billions of dollars to attract before Lake Nona Medical Center got developed, and Lake County certainly doesn't have those resources. But we do have a solid framework in place that we can work from to attract new businesses. But our main jobs are going to come from growing our local businesses.
Okay. Well, if you started that 4 years ago, did
The
you say?
plan?
Yeah.
No, it's just been, I initiated it. The plan hasn't been in place that long.
Okay, so but 4 years ago, the idea for the plan came
Yes,
up.
yes.
And the plan is in what stage now?
Well, we have the committees up and running, making sure we have the correct infrastructure in the right places, and developing a marketing plan. We are in the process of hiring a new economic growth and redevelopment director that's had proven success in counties similar to Lake County. So we're very serious about this plan, and it's working committees. We're not just talking, we're putting it into action.
Is it, do you think it's moving fast enough?
Do I know? I don't think it's moving fast enough, but I think with this recession we're in, and it seems like the economy is going to be pretty slow from now on, that there's not going to be any speed to it. But we have to remain committed to it, and it'll guide us out of this, help guide us out of this. But in the meantime, we focus on our local businesses, and we have business incubators in Lake County. We have business resource centers. different commissioners are going out to their communities and working with their local businesses. I know Commissioner Rennick was meeting with her local businesses, and she came up with the idea of things called go teams that could go out and help bring businesses into South Lake area. I've been working with businessmen along the Main Street District in Mount Plymouth Sorrento community to help them. So our commissioners are actually getting out into the community and getting involved. So
Before we go on, I realized probably a couple times along the way I've said 2 years ago when you were elected, when actually I meant 4 years. We had a candidate for Congress in a little earlier, and I was thinking 2-year terms, so I understand it's 4 years. Okay, Mr. Emery, about economic development.
I've been active in lake issues for more than 20 years, and I can't sit here and say I've come up with some brilliant new idea, because I think a lot of these ideas that Linda and Paul talked about, and others will, are known about. And we're doing a much better job than we have in the past of actually pursuing some of those, and I encourage that. But some of the things that we've left out of the discussion so far, transportation. We are a little bit behind on spending for transportation in Lake County because of the nature of our tax base. We're going to have trouble catching up because of the situation our economy places us in. At Sun Cycle, where I work, I've seen how expansion of 441 cost us business for a while, and it really hurt us. I mean, having 441 torn up in front of us made it difficult. These sorts of things, you have to do a better job of lead time to take care of the businesses that we have in Lake County, because that's really our economic base. So we've got to take care of that. We also have to recognize things like what Linda talked about, some of those key businesses we can concentrate on, like ecotourism. We have 2 shops. We have one over in Inverness that's right on the trail, the Withlacoochee Trail. And the difference in our business between those 2 stores is amazing. One located on a 6-lane highway, one on a trail. We do a tremendous amount of business from people who come outside of Inverness to that location for day trips and stuff like that. It's really great for our business. We need more opportunities like that in Lake County. We have lakes, kayakers, canoeists, fishing. All of these industries are worth attracting, and we're spending more time trying to attract. So those are the kinds of things that interest me and that I'd be pursuing, in addition to a lot of the stuff we've talked about.
Okay.
Okay. Well, one of the reasons I decided to run for county commissioner was the fact that I didn't see a sense of urgency on our county commission with regard to getting this economic development plan going and actually implemented. And my goal would be to project an image of Lake County as pro-business, not pro-growth. I don't think that's where we need to go. I think we've got to be extremely careful that any type of activity that we recruit to Lake County is the kind of activity that doesn't damage our special character and our rural traits and all the qualities that that people come to Lake County to, the activities and things they can be engaged in. And that's where the ecotourism comes in, because that's a wonderful thing to build upon. We don't have a real coordinated approach in that regard. We've got a lot of training facilities in Lake County. We've got the National Training Facility in South Lake County. We've got a huge AAU facility up in the Paisley area. And I think that we could focus on sports training, ecotourism, but that alone, it's just simply unrealistic to think that that's going to fuel our economy. And that's where we need to be targeting these certain industries. I agree with the industries that we're targeting, that we're supposed to be targeting, and I think that we're a non-charter county, so that we wouldn't have the ability to do a ad valorem tax break unless we put it to a referendum. So we have some limitations that some of the other counties don't have. But there are other incentives.
I'm sorry, let me make sure I understand. You say you can't do a property tax break
Right.
without a referendum.
Right.
Okay. Because you're a non-charter county. Right.
But we can use, there's a transportation fund incentive program that's provided by the state of Florida, and that's an opportunity to actually address some of those infrastructure needs. If we were to bring in a particular cluster of industries, we could tap into that, as well as some incentives that the state of Florida provides for job creation. So those, I would take advantage of those types of incentives. But I think people in Lake County have a hard time swallowing putting a whole lot of incentives out there on the table, when what I understand in talking to business leaders from other areas is that it's really about giving that sense of that business being welcomed. And I think that's where your county commissioners can make a huge difference if they actually take an active role in the recruiting side of going out to these targeted industries, meeting with those folks, asking them to come visit Lake County. And part of my economic plan is that we go and we look at some of our existing facilities, some of our blighted commercial areas or vacant commercial areas, and we actually try to redevelop within those previously developed sites as opposed to new sites. Of course, there are going to be situations where we need to look at new facilities, but there are a lot of opportunities for redevelopment of the things that are just sitting there vacant. So I would focus on that.
Okay, Mr. Atkins.
I got a little bit different turn on this. I agree with all the other candidates here about economic development and giving incentives to businesses to come to Lake County. We all want new business and industry to diversify our tax base. Lake County has been, for many, many years, back in 1988 and after, a residential community, a bedroom to the Central Florida. Our ad valorem taxes are based about 80% on residential. It's going to take many years to create a different tax base away from residential to business. We need to, like Commissioner Stewart's been doing, they've been trying to entice businesses and new industries to Lake County. But in this economy, corporations and companies are not going to pick up and move their businesses to Lake County. It costs too much money to do that right now, and shareholders would fire their board of directors if they start spending money foolishly on doing something just like that. So after saying that we are a residential tax base. We have a lot of vacant homes in Lake County. We have foreclosures all over the United States, but we need to increase our tax base by bringing in retirees to fill up these foreclosed homes. We need to market Lake County not only for businesses and new industries, but also to bring retirees back to Lake County. By doing so, it'll increase our ad valorem taxes, and also we need to shrink government debt back down to size and get rid of wasteful government spending. If we do those two items, we'll be able to cut the millage, and by cutting the millages, we'll be able to reduce taxes for the people of Lake County. I'm all for new incentives to businesses, but we gotta be realistic. We are a bedroom community, and we need to use what we got to bring in the revenue we need to run the county.
Okay, well, you fortunately hit on something I wanted to ask about, which has to do with the county's budget, but I did want to ask you a quick follow-up. How does one go about enticing retirees to come to your county?
Well,
where do you go advertise?
Well, yeah. First of all, we're spending $300,000 a year at the Metro Economic Development Commission, and we didn't get a lot of return on that. I think we need to spend money on marketing Lake County. We need to get a good economic development director that has expertise and has been in the same position in a different county or in the private sector to go out and market Lake County throughout the United States. We see ads all the time on TV, come to Miami, retire to Las Vegas, etc. Las Vegas is the #1 retirement area in the United States. One reason could be because they are marketing Las Vegas for retirees to come to. So we can do the same thing. We can fill up these foreclosures, and when we fill up the foreclosures and the bank-owned home, it's going to create a increase in market value for everybody in Lake County. And by doing that, there's a lot of people, their major investment is their homes, and they can't retire yet until they get their market value back up where they can retire.
Okay. Since you brought it up, like every government in this area, I'm sure Lake County is going to have a problem with its budget in the coming year. And you mentioned waste and shrinking government, so I'm interested in hearing everybody's thoughts about whether there is waste and where you would cut it, and if you are able to be specific,
Okay.
that's helpful.
Couple of questions. I'll start first of all to answer the what would I do on the budget. I've been in business for 33 years. I'm a businessman. I think business people realize in this type of economy you need a zero-based budget. You don't need mission creep. Every year in the budgeting of money for the different departments, we've had mission creep. They say we need $5 million and it goes to $5.2 million. We need each individual department to come in, prove what they need from zero, and build it that way. So what you want and what you need are two different items. We need to just use what we need, not what we want. So as I think any good businessman, and I consider myself a good businessman, I've been in business for 33 years. I've seen 3 recessions and also in what we call this recession. And I've lived through all of them. I'm still in business. We need to start out with a zero-based budget, and that would take out all the unnecessary wasteful government spending. We've all talked about the purchase of the communication system in Lake County. It was done with a one-source bid, and that one-source bid was taken by the county commission. And now we find out there's a $1.6 million maintenance fee tied into that purchase. That's what I call wasteful spending without knowing what your follow-up maintenance fees are going to be.
Okay.
Well,
Okay.
we know at this point that we're looking at about a $12 million shortfall in our revenue stream. So we have got to make some significant cuts to the size and spending.
And remind us all what that's 12 million out of a budget that's how large?
It's about 180 million on an operating budget.
Okay.
Of course, that includes our constitutional officers, our sheriff, our property and tax collector, and supervisor of elections and clerk of court. But so I've looked at this pretty closely. I've gone back about 10 years and looked at the different budgets, and my initial feeling on it was, let's go back to when we were bringing in the same amount of revenue that we're bringing in right now. Let's take a look at what we were providing to the residents of Lake County at that point in time, and I think we've got to go in that direction. We've got to just shrink it to get back down to that direction. You also have to look for any cost savings that you can find, and I would be in favor of essentially going in and auditing every single department, determining where we've got overlap, where we can actually consolidate departments. There are areas that have a lot of overlap, zoning and code enforcement and animal control and things like that. I would look at maintenance, how we maintain our buildings and our property to see if we're doing that as efficiently as possible. Maybe we need to outsource something like that. I think that you have to look at every single possibility where you could actually just save money as a result of how you go about doing things like purchasing and procurement. And we made some pretty big blunders over the last couple years in gigantic purchases, and we have this ongoing program where we piggyback on state contracts and just assume that we're getting the best deal with those, and right down to like the tires that we put on our vehicles. You've got to look at every single possibility for saving money, I think. So those are, I mean, that's where I'm coming from, and
What's an example of a blunder?
well, the radio contract was one, and that there was not a competitive bid on that, and it was essentially the response has been, well, this was the only company that could provide that particular product. Well, the bid was written in such a way so that this was the only company that could provide that
Okay. Were
particular
there any
product.
others? That you-
We had several variations on a courthouse expansion and government buildings that were modified and modified and modified, and we ended up with, I believe it was a $600,000 bill from our architectural firm, and it was decided by the county commission to pay all of those fees, even though there wasn't a set amount that had been approved. So I saw that as one of those situations where you would never pay the initial asking price that they put out there, and you would go back and you would negotiate, and it should have been much, much lower what they ultimately paid those the architectural firm.
Okay. Mr. Emery.
Well, my mother's a finance director for cities, has been for a number of years, and she's taught me how to go over balance sheets and read those things, and I have to admit there's a reason I'm not in that business. It's hard for me to spend time defending government expenditures because I've spent my whole career as a taxpayer, and like everybody else, I hate writing the checks for the things. But in my course over the last 20 years, I have seen the demands of citizens for services from our government increase. And yet our growth pattern has strained those very services. So now we find ourselves in this trap of trying to continue to provide those services, and yet the costs are higher than they've ever been before. So it's impossible for us to go back to the budgets of the past and maintain the services. Now we can cut the services, we can cut staff, and we've done that. And a lot of the folks that have been laid off or getting laid off, I've had relationships over the years, and we hate to see them go. But we are making some difficult choices there, and it's kind of difficult for me because I met with the interim county manager last week, and according to him, everything's great. Everything's smooth sailing and wonderful going forward. And yet I read the budgets, and we got some scary choices ahead of us. And it's rarely easy for me to sit here and think about throwing stones at those that have been responsible for that budget, but that's a difficult job. It's not one aspect I'm particularly looking forward to. I think there's some opportunities there, but we got to make some difficult choices, and I don't look forward to that at all.
You say the interim county manager told you that when you said everything's
Oh,
great,
the reserves are great. We'll have to dip into those a little bit, but it's no big deal, and we'll be fine for a couple of years. And you know, I know it's his job to make everybody feel better, but it didn't make me feel better.
Okay, well, Ms. Stewart, you're on the county commission. Is that
Yeah.
what you're hearing from the manager?
No, in fact, I've heard quite a few things mentioned in the last few minutes that I don't agree with. Government was pretty fat when I took office, and there was a lot of waste. And the last few years, we have significantly reduced government infrastructure, government spending, and government workforce. In fact, we've reduced our job force by 16%.
Okay, so how many employees does that represent?
Oh gosh. Well, we reduced to, you know, I can't give you the number right now. I have it in my information
Okay.
my truck.
What about the budget?
16%.
16%.
We reduced
Right.
the.
So what's the budget, this year's budget look like compared with 4 years ago?
Well, we're $12 million we have to come up with.
Well, no, I mean, when you came into office, you had a budget that was X, and so what
Well,
is
when
the
we came
budget
into
now?
office, we knew at that time things were going to get worse year after year, and that we'd better start preparing with our first budget to make cuts. And that's when we started preparing for the difficult time that was coming. But of course, we didn't have to make as many budget cuts the first year. But we immediately began looking at ways to save money by being more efficient, by eliminating some of the government programs that they had been doing on an annual basis, such as the State of the County breakfast at Lake receptions. We started looking at easy ways to cut. County commissioners, well, I won't say all, most county commissioners never file for what they spend in gas. In fact, we pay all of our expenses, food, everything, even when we're required to go to Tallahassee, except we do pay our hotel bill. County pays our hotel bill, but we never stay at the most expensive one. We look for the cheaper one. So we started off by calling in cell phones, that kind of thing, that were really any big deal. But as we went along, every year the economy got worse and worse, and we had to start making significant cuts. We established 12 furlough days for all employees and saved an unbelievable amount of money, but that meant a pay cut for employees. We had a hiring freeze. We've consolidated departments. In fact, we just did another consolidation and eliminated a lot of high-paying directors'
Well,
positions.
what's an example of a department that was consolidated?
We consolidated our public safety with,
Public Works.
with public work. Thank you. And we consolidated community services a while back with another department. I'm sorry, I just can't remember what they were right now. The main point was that we made sure we weren't duplicating services, and we were cutting back in each department.
Okay, so looking ahead to the next budget year, what?
This coming budget year,
Yes, what are you saying? What are you seeing? And
well,
how are you
we're
doing?
going to have to use some of our reserves. We've about cut as much as we can without actually getting into cutting services. Fortunately, Lake County has a healthy reserve, and we have an even healthier one now because we did downsize that judicial center. When I took office, we had a huge judicial center planned, and I'm not saying we don't need that in the future, but we just couldn't afford it. So we downsized it to live within our means. And that's why we still had to pay those architectural fees for that large judicial center. I mean, they did the work for us, and we did have to pay that. But we saved the taxpayers a tremendous amount of money, and we put a lot of the money we saved back into reserves. We decided not to, at this time, purchase the land in South Lake for a regional park, because just not that we don't have the money to do it. So we put the money we'd set aside back into our reserves, so that we had a better, more in that account. So since with the money we've added to the reserves, we're actually not reducing our reserves at all this year, or pretty much staying close. And we're going to be able to balance the budget and not cut any services. Now, we cannot keep relying on reserves. We know that. It's going to take a while, probably years, to get back to where we were. Property values will start rising. But this year, we're managing, and we may be able to manage next year. But after that, we're probably going to have to start looking at some other solutions to this.
Okay.
But I would like to say that I know this isn't the time and the place, but there was some inaccurate information given today on the radio system, on the architectural fees, and on the judicial center that made it sound like this commission has wasted a lot of money, and that simply is not true. This county commission has been very conservative with the taxpayers' money the last 4 years.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Williams.
Oh, just everyone's covered just about everything. I don't know if
Have
there's
they?
much
They
left.
leave you any room?
No, but one of my major thoughts are to have all the cities in the county get together and work to find ways to eliminate duplication and conflicting efforts, because if we can work a little bit more cohesively, we can cut back on a lot of the strain on municipalities' budgets and our county budget as well. Someone mentioned privatizing, and that's a great idea, because it's part of my vision as well to privatize many of the services that the county does offer. I like to work more with the sheriffs. No one can touch the sheriff's budget. That's a totally separate budget. However, we can ask to work with the sheriff a lot more, a lot closer, to keep his budget from going up, because he's got a pretty healthy budget. I think it's about 68 million or 70 million, something of that nature. But there's some areas that I like to just have him consider privatizing, because if you look at the courthouse, you have some very expensive security at the courthouse entrance, when you can privatize that for a lot less and repurpose those deputies somewhere else where their security level is needed a lot more. There's some areas in the county where we can privatize maybe maintenance on the parks. In fact, that's an area that I believe some of the citizens, if they want to use a park, privatize it, or else have them take care of it themselves. Because if you look at our Lake County parks, they're not overrun with people utilizing our parks. Yes, they do need maintenance and care, but still, that's a pretty healthy expense on our budget. I think we should also renegotiate many of the debt services that we have. For example, the bond that pays for Covanta, we've renegotiated that debt service, so we're going to knock off $600,000 there, and also we're going to, I think we're paying $1 million less next year because we modified that debt service. So that's going to help a little bit. That's only a short-term Band-Aid right now. I believe that many of the maintenance agreements for large ticket items and small ticket items can be renegotiated. I used to sell for IBM years and years ago, and those maintenance agreements are something tricky if you don't really pay attention to them. But you can renegotiate those maintenance agreements. That would save us a sizable amount. Have more employees multitask. As Linda did say, that we've had consolidation, and I think we have to continue with departmental and employee consolidation as well, or the task consolidation. We just need to reevaluate many of the services delivery that we have, and see if there's ways that we can cut back.
Can you provide maybe an example, something you thought about that it represents some duplication of effort or services between the city and counties that could be combined.
Yeah, there's the crime investigation. Well, that's I'm looking into the sheriff's budget once again, but maybe some road maintenance in areas, or the fire department's area, where there's some enclaves outside of some of the cities that are county property, or where there's county residents. Have the have the cities take care of those enclaves, while the county would concentrate more on the outer areas, more rural areas. That would save time, response time, as well as gas and equipment use. That's one area that we could look at.
Okay. Okay, we're running short on time, but I wanted to get to one question, and if I could just beg you to answer it as quickly as possible. But as I understand it, the county, at some point, in the not so distant past, suspended transportation impact fees, and of course, keeping in mind that the reason for impact fees is to pay for services that growth creates a need for, and that's why they were created in the first place. But I'm wondering if I could find out from everybody whether you have an interest in either keeping them suspended indefinitely, doing away with them, reducing them, or putting them back to where they were, or in the unlikely event somebody might want to say they want to increase them. So why don't we start with you, Ms. Campione,
Okay.
and tell us how about impact fees. Again,
Well,
if
and you-
everybody could just go as quickly
Okay,
as possible.
all right. You mentioned transportation impact fees as opposed to any other impact fee. So transportation impact fee, that's the impact fee that we did suspend.
Right.
This particular impact fee, I think that we need to completely look at revamping how we do this, because transportation impact fees significantly impact new businesses coming to Lake County. So I think that what we've done is we've deterred new business activity, because we can't give some of the incentives that other areas can give. This is an area where we could offer something that other places don't have, and that would be that we don't have the transportation impact fees, or we have a significantly reduced amount on business activities. And I think you can justify that in a lot of different ways, but one of the things I've looked at is I've looked at some of the businesses that we have in Lake County and their ongoing ad valorem tax revenues they bring in year after year after year. When you compare that to that one-time fee that you get, you're much better off getting the business here and getting that ongoing ad valorem revenue from that company. So I think that what you would have to do is you would have to look at taking a portion of that ad valorem revenue and dedicate that towards infrastructure. And infrastructure needs that are necessitated by that particular company coming in to the area. Another thing that I would propose doing is that you would actually have, if you're working on an industrial park, for example, and you needed infrastructure that went along with that, and you had impacts as a result of that, you would actually work with the developer to let them put those infrastructure needs in place, as opposed to us taking the money and having to administer the whole impact fee program. We let the private sector do it, and I think we'd save a lot of money, and the businesses would like that because they know they can get it done at a better price.
Okay, Mr. Atkins, about those fees.
Okay, the transportation fee, I think that we keep it waived for right now for 1 year. I think that, I don't think it's done very good so far, because the economy has dictated businesses moving here, not the transportation fee. I think in the year coming, it could make a difference. As far as, I'd be even for waiving impact fees on businesses to come to Lake County, not giving them incentives, because by waiving the impact fees and the businesses do come, it'll create enough taxes and revenue for Lake County to offset probably 10 times the amount of the money we'd save on the impact fees that we would get from them. Second, to address what Leslie just said, is that as far as infrastructures to development of different facilities, I don't agree with that. I think that we should have the developer pay for those fees, because and let the municipalities or the counties put those infrastructures in, because if they're put in correctly, there will not be a problem down the road of having to fix it and the taxpayers having to fork that bill of paying for them.
Okay, Mr. Williams.
I think that the impact fees are important. I do not want to see us eliminate them altogether. I believe the impact fees could and should be reduced at least by 60% or more just to get businesses started. The transportation impact fees go to a worthy cause to assist Lake County with this infrastructure and its growth. It's needed. Everything is driven by money. Let's just face it. Developers want to develop. People want to buy a home and enjoy the comforts of life that Lake County has to offer. And I think the impact fees play a significant role there. I'm just going to keep it short and concise to that point.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Okay, Ms. Stewart.
Well, first, our transportation impact fees are comparable to the surrounding counties, and so we're not driving business away from Lake County because of those impact fees. Research had shown us that suspending the fees probably would not increase commercial permits in the county, and the record so far shows that it hasn't. But I did vote to suspend them just to send a positive message to the business community. I agree that commercial, it pays for itself. That's why we're working so hard to increase the commercial tax base. Unfortunately, residential does not pay for itself. And the impact fees collected on residential do not nearly, are way more than the taxes that house brings in. So the growth, that cost falls back on the citizens. It's different with commercial, it does pay for itself. Unfortunately, for legal reasons, we cannot separate residential impact fees from commercial impact fees. If we take them off commercial, we take them off residential, and I am not willing to do that. Citizens have paid enough for the cost of growth, and we need impact fees to help them with that cost. Doesn't pay for all of it, and eventually we're probably going to have to look at some other sources to cover that cost of growth, but I'm definitely in favor of impact fees and will support, I will vote to reinstate the transportation impact fee in December.
Oh, you will, okay.
Yes.
That's when the moratorium on them expires.
Yes. Mhm.
Okay, Mr. Emery.
I've been active in a group that I think, to a large part, helped to get impact fees brought to Lake County. The county formed a committee to study what the actual costs of growth were, and the impact fees were set. Last time I checked, it was still 80% of the actual cost of growth. And during the explosive time down in Claremont, those fees were collected, and right before Claremont locked up in a transportation gridlock, the county commission was able to spend money to build roads in Claremont and basically save that situation down there. We have to have those monies to pay for the transportation needs generated by growth. And so we need to collect the impact fees. And if they're not right, then we need to reset them. But they need to reflect the real cost of growth. I think they have, and they need to be implemented.
Okay, well, unfortunately, we're out of time. I have to go to another meeting. But I appreciate all of you coming in to talk to me and your patience with the format. So thanks again for coming in.
Thanks for
Thank
the
you.
opportunity.
Very much.